It begins our deep dive or retrospective of the Uncharted series. In the coming weeks, we'll be going through the major characters, treasures, and of course the different entries in the series, their development and the events that transpired, the adventures, the travels, and the personal journeys of the characters in Naughty Dog's Project Big, aka Uncharted. In the primer video, Everything You Need to Know About Uncharted, I mentioned that one of the aspects I found most interesting about the Uncharted games is the fact that you can collect small treasures along the way, their collection unlocking skins and weapons and other benefits. I enjoy them for two reasons. The first is the added immersion factor of having the treasure hunter actually collect some riches, and the second, using the items and their locations to learn more of the civilizations and peoples to whom the artifacts would belong to. That's what we're talking about today, the treasures of Uncharted Drake's Fortune. This is only the optional items you can collect. For the main MacGuffin of the game, El Dorado, you'll have to wait for the deep dive into the game itself for me to cover that one. For this look of the treasures found across the many chapters of the first Uncharted, I'll break them into four major categories. First, Inca. Items related to the Inca Empire or other peoples from the Andes. Just because it says Inca on the tin does not necessarily mean they did it, but I'll get to that later. Spanish. A fair chunk of Uncharted Drake's Fortune takes place on a lost Spanish island colony from the 16th century, and the conquistadors that made it their home had a few treasures of their own, or that they plundered and took with them. Easter egg, not a real fictional artifact, but one tied to other Naughty Dog games. And the last category, no idea whatsoever. For those I couldn't find a reasonable origin for, or a real-world analog. Most of the treasures come in pairs, gold and silver, so I'll cover both of them together. There are also some types that come in like 4 varieties, such as silver, gold, jeweled silver, and jeweled gold. Those I'll also cover together. If we count all those repeat items as a single entry, and adding on the unique pieces, the total number of treasures in Uncharted Drake's Fortune goes from 60 to about 29. Now, in terms of the locations, these items are found between the Amazon jungle and the Lost Colony. The Inca Empire reached the Amazon, at the very least the edges of it, so it makes sense for Nathan to find Inca or Andean people artifacts while exploring the Amazon. As for the Spanish, well, they did travel the length of the rainforest, and they did do a lot of conquering, so it also makes sense to find their artifacts or those of cultures they subjugated in both the Amazon and the Spanish colony. But it's time to talk about the treasures. First up, the earrings. We find 4 earrings, 2 mosaic and 2 decorated, like turquoise and gold or silver. For the Inca, gold was the material reserved for nobility, while silver was the material of the common folk, and earrings like those found in the game are fairly common. It's worth noting that unlike earrings as we know them today, these pieces didn't hang or were supported by a thin metal stub, but by thick pieces or rods similar to modern-day tunnels. The Inca Empire rose in the Andes Mountains and, as part of their expansion, absorbed many cultures through both peaceful annexation and not-so-peaceful annexation. Among them was the Chimu, who in turn were descendants of another civilization called the Moche or Mochica. The reason I mention this is that the Inca were influenced by the techniques and styles of these other civilizations, and some of the items we find in Uncharted Drake's Fortune that bear the Inca name may just be Moche artifacts instead. They were kind of the progenitors of that kind of style of jewelry or metalwork. In fact, if you look for Moche earrings, the mosaic earring as depicted in Uncharted is a 1-to-1 match. The monkey figurines are a mystery, and I place them in the no idea whatsoever category. The style doesn't match Inca, Chimu, or Moche, the style of Spanish 16th century silverwork, nor that of the examples we have in-game of some Spanish-conquered civilization. So it's a mystery, and in the comments, if you know what the real counterparts of these figurines would be, please let me know. I went down that rabbit hole and came up empty. Now we have the rings, and honestly, they also go in the mystery category. At first, I thought of putting them in the Inca category, as they don't match the typical 16th century Spanish ring, which are over the top as all hell, profusely ornamental. And while I did find some hunting gold bands from the same period that kinda look alike, it's not this kind of slim band, but really wide. But no matter where I look, I cannot find a single instance of an Inca or Moche ring, at least not finger ring. Nose rings by the dozen. The rings do bear a similarity to the style of 16th century English rings, and Sir Francis Drake is part of the story, but it would make these rings the only English treasures amid primarily pre-Columbian and Spanish ones. So again, no idea whatsoever. The llama figurines are textbook Inca figurines. In fact, if you do a quick search for Inca silverwork or goldwork, you'll find both the human Inca figurine and also the llama as they are depicted in Uncharted. You'll find them in several museums across the world. The cups, which in the game we have as Inca cup and Inca vessel, are what the Andean cultures called quero when made from wood and aquilla when made from metal. Regardless, their purpose is the same, a ritual drinking vessel, particularly for the consumption of corn beer, aka chicha. In Inca times, they were made in pairs as custom dictated that two individuals had to drink together. Now a fascinating one, the Tairona pendant. One quick glance you'll think, oh yeah, this is for sure Inca. And no, this goes into the Spanish category, but not for the reasons you may think. You remember I mentioned that items would go into the Spanish category if they were part of a culture subjugated by the Spanish? Hell, that's the Tairona, a culture from the region that is now Colombia. These pendants are iconic metalwork of the Tairona. If you look the Tairona up and their metalwork, you'll see these pendants as the first result. With that said, I have not been able to find any evidence of Tairona silverwork. They primarily work with gold, and specifically a gold alloy called tumbaga, which is a mix of gold, silver, and copper. The charms come in two flavors, Spanish and who the hell knows. The jaguar charms don't match the Inca or related, but they do match the jaguars of the Chiriqui people of Panama, another Spanish-conquered pre-Columbian culture. So that one goes under Spanish. The turtle treasures are also Chiriqui in origin and match the design of Chiriqui bell charms. As for who knows what the hell, we have the frog and fish charms, which don't match anything pre-Columbian that I could find, nor anything European for that matter. The toothpicks are Spanish as hell. In fact, most European toothpicks of the time had this kind of vibe with sword-like designs and served as toothpicks, nail cleaners, and even tongue scrapers. I shudder to think of them being used for all three and in sequence. The coins tie to the mysterious island colony where the game takes place and matches in style the type of coin found in 16th century Spain. The silver likely being a piece of 8, the most common denomination for the Spanish real, worth 1/8 of a real, and the gold one likely being an escudo, aka a shield, which was worth 16 reales, or it could be the more famous doubloon, which comes from double, aka 32 reales. The ingots are also a match for typical 16th century Spanish slabs of gold and silver, though I couldn't tell you for the life of me what the symbols on the ingots actually mean. The cups and chalices couldn't be more Spanish, they likely fit in any church around the world, and I don't have much more to say about those. But the gold cross, and silver cross by that matter, provide context clues, especially if you look at the way the gems are inlaid, which is a perfect match for the brooches. Not to mention the intricate nature of those jeweled brooches are a perfect match for the very extra decorative style of 16th century Spain. As far as the Inca are concerned, they did not really create brooches. Instead, they made something called tupus, pin-like fasteners for clothes, which, while made from gold and silver, were very simple in their design. And you know, the belt buckle, that's very much European. Nothing more to say about that. The spoon, on the other hand, is very much Inca. In fact, it's close in design to a spoon found in a sunken Spanish galleon. How's that for treasure hunting adventure in real life? The skulls are a curious thing. If you go by movie representations, you'd think this was Inca. But there is another treasure that provides the clues we need to make the determination, and that is the gold skull rosary, which, given the nature of a rosary, is indubitably Spanish. And given the design of the skulls, in that Rosary matched that of the silver and gold skulls, we can determine that the skulls are in fact of Spanish origin. Snuff boxes are a European thing, full stop. For the Inca, Coke was their substance of choice, as a stimulant, remedy, and even spiritual tool, so the Snuff Box goes to the Spaniards. Same with the Sea Dragon Pendant. In fact, the pendant we see in-game is rather simplistic compared to the intricate, bejeweled, and enameled pendants you'll likely see in real life when looking this stuff up. Now we come to the last few items. First, the Coatimundi, Coatis being a cousin to the raccoon. The design of the metal Coatis we find in Uncharted Drake's Fortune match the design style of other curly-tailed animals as made by the Chiriqui of Panama, so this one goes on the Spanish category. The masks are decorative items of Inca or Moche origin, and could be anything from decorations, like say, going on banners, to funeral masks. Given that the shape of the mask found in-game is not exactly what one would call anatomically correct, I'm leaning more towards this being a decorative item than a funerary one. Still, Inca. The bird vessels are Moche Chimu Inca bottles. Though most commonly made of clay, there are some examples of Chimu bottles made in silver, some calling the ones in-game at least feasible and in the Inca category. The closest bottles in appearance to this one that I could find are what's called stirrup bottles. The stirrup in the name is because the handle, which is part of the spout, looks like the stirrups that hang from a saddle. And last but not least is the strange Relic, which is not a historical item at all, but a reference to the precursor orbs in the Jak and Daxter series. A little callback and a nod from the good people at Naughty Dog. And that's it for this view at the treasures we find in Uncharted Drake's Fortune. I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe this sparks your own desire to look through the history of the many treasures found in this game and others. Join me next time as we dive deep into the game itself, into Uncharted Drake's Fortune, its story, its history, and the pursuit of El Dorado.